stay down. Hockey and music, two really important pillars in the cultural foundation of this country. And a man in charge of that is Stephen Harper's Point Mountain Culture, the Minister of Canadian Heritage. His name is James Moore. James has been on the program. There he is on his way into the studio right now. Looking forward to having Mr. Moore back in. Here's his bio.
All right, let's face it. The Minister of Canadian Heritage and Official Languages, historically, not the sexiest of cabinet portfolios. Well, let's just say James Moore has added new life to the job.
This is an important industry for Canadians. Arts and culture accounts for almost 750,000 jobs in this country.
At 33, Moore is not only the youngest member of cabinet, but arguably the most tech-savvy. In fact, he's even been called the iPod Minister. Yeah, not your stereotypical politician. Moore is a BC guy and was first elected MP in 2000 as a member of the Canadian Alliance, which became part of the Conservative Party in 2003. James went with it and has become a bit of a rising Tory star. He served as Secretary of State for Official Languages in the 2010 Olympics. Then in 2008, on to Canadian Heritage. One of his first tasks there, defending the government's controversial decision to cut $45 million in arts funding.
The programs that we're talking about here are far less than 1% of the overall budget for the federal government when it comes to arts and culture across the country.
Moore is also the Prime Minister's point man on the struggling media industry. Recently, he hit the news again, this time for revealing he's a huge fan of Ultimate Fighting, a sport banned in parts of Canada.
Minister of Canadian Heritage, James Moore. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Yeah, I watch. This is my 10th year in politics. Even watching those videos, I see the old pictures of myself. I think, my God, the ravages of time. But there you are.
Politics can wipe you out, man.
It can, but it's a brilliant ride and it's an amazing experience. And it's something that I can't thank my constituents enough for the experience.
Well, you four consecutive elections in that constituency?
4 elections in a row. That's right. Yeah.
It's never been done in your constituency, has it?
Not been done in my riding before. So we're going for 5 maybe.
And in the. Ooh. The drive for 5.
The drive for 5, exactly.
That's all right. There's a bunch of things I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about copyright. Before we get to that, I want to talk to you about the UFC thing, because we saw it right off the end of your bio right there. You're a big UFC fan, and in big parts of the country, it's not allowed.
Big parts of the country it's not allowed, mostly because there's confusion about the law. The truth is the province of Quebec has got it right. I mean, most provinces have their own jurisdiction over the sport, and they can decide whether or not to sanction it. The province of British Columbia, they basically kicked it down to municipalities. So each municipality has its own debate about whether or not they want to allow mixed martial arts. The province of Quebec has uniform rules for the whole province. Ontario was thinking about it, but Dalton McGuinty has basically shut the door to that. But it's wildly popular. It's the fastest growing sport in the world, and the most popular and most successful athlete in the fastest growing sport in the world is a Canadian, Georges St-Pierre from Montreal. And I'm a big fan, and I think it's great. It's going to be here in Vancouver in a couple of weeks. It was in Montreal last week, and they sold out GM Place here in 20 minutes. 20,000 tickets in 20 minutes. It shows the popularity.
Is it appropriate for a minister to talk to a premier about this? Is it something that you can do? Would Stephen Harper let you do that?
Of course, it's actually not just provincial jurisdiction. There's some crossover here, as I said, with regard to the laws. But it was a debate here in the city of Vancouver. That's when I proclaimed my support for the sport, because it was a debate here in the city of Vancouver. I'm the minister responsible for the city of Vancouver, and I was very proud to engage the debate. And I'm very glad that the UFC will be coming in a couple of weeks.
Let's talk about the copyright law. There's big changes coming. You're going to table your bill shortly. Do you know when?
We have said that we want to table it this spring,
right.
And the legislation that we're going to table will maintain, full solidarity with what we promised to do in the throne speech, which is to have a balanced copyright legislation which protects and enforces, what's in the best interest of both consumers and of the creative community.
Some stuff is starting to leak out about what I guess people perceive might be in the copyright law. So I just ask you a couple of things that affect a lot of the consumers point blank. If you buy a CD, are you allowed to copy it and put it on your own iPod under your bill?
You're really going to have to wait for the bill. I mean, there are cabinet confidences here and certain things. So, George, I know it's the hour with George.
It's just us.
Yeah, George. Hello Magazine, a week ago, named George one of the 50 most beautiful people in Canada, and even with that, So you can bat those eyelashes at me all you like, but I'm afraid you're just gonna have to wait for the bill.
But let me ask you a question. Why I understand cabinet confidences and all that, but this is just one thing. You're talking about balancing for consumers. There are a lot of people that think this is kind of really lock in step with what's going on in the United States in terms of their copyright laws, which will skew heavily in favor of the creators of the content as opposed to the consumer.
It's not that simple. Copyright legislation is never that simple. It is complicated. But I will say this, that the legislation that we will table will balance the interests of consumers and creators and will be a modernization, was the key word, a modernization of copyright legislation, which is to say that it takes into account the consultations we did last year to recognize that people's consumers' behaviors are changing, and legislation and regulation need to reflect that.
But and no one will deny that the copyright law in Canada is antiquated. It certainly isn't up to where it needs to be, but there are a lot of people that think that the consultation that you guys met many times with the business side and not really representative consultation with the consumer. And so people feel like the consumer is going to be left out in the cold here.
Well, anybody who says that is saying that in absence of actually having read the legislation. So people are judging something
Okay,
without
then
having
tell us
reading
what's
it.
in the legislation.
Okay,
we
well,
can do
let me
this.
yeah.
I just want to know because, look, I put a lot of songs on an iPod, and I'm totally fine being a lawbreaker, but that's me, right? I think because that's an indicator.
Well, we did consultations and they were broad. They included everybody, including the general public. I did town halls in Montreal and Quebec City. We had one in here in Vancouver. We were all over the place. Mm-hmm. And we heard from a broad cross-section of people. There was no slanting one way or the other. And the general public could give in their own feedback as they wished to. And we received thousands of responses and some very good ideas. Copyright legislation was tried under the Liberals under a bill called Bill C-60. We tried under C-61. There have been some private members' bills in the House of Commons. There's plenty of grist for the mill, and all kinds of good ideas came out of the consultation. And I will tell you that the legislation will reflect what we committed to do in the throne speech, which is a balance and modernization in our copyright regime.
Okay. In previous time, you've talked about how important it is for you to encourage, help initiate the production of new Canadian television shows and such, new Canadian content. I took a look at this, the reworking of the rules for the Canadian Media Fund and all of that involving. I don't see any provisions for that, so I need to understand where that is, because I've taken a look at the way the money's been split up.
Right.
And that for a lot of people out there, one of the ways that you dictate who gets funding for an envelope will be based on success, audience success. But when I read further into that, one of the audience success is determined by ratings, which is fine, but then it valued the 800th repeat of a show tied into ratings, meaning that a cable network could run Mike Holmes, as they should, 300 times, because Mike Holmes should be on TV every day. I say that, he should. And what that does is that takes up all those time slots, and there's just no way new Canadian shows are ever going to find a place. So I'm having trouble seeing that, where there's going to be room for new Canadian shows to be developed under this system.
Again, not quite that simple. Again, this is the amalgamation of the Canada Television Fund and the Canada New Media Fund, which we've merged together because the idea of new media and television being separate envelopes of funding is antiquated. So we merged them together in the Canada Media Fund. And by the way, this fund altogether was set to fall apart less than 2 years ago. So we put it together, Canada Media Fund. It has its own independent board of directors. The old board of directors that was responsible for the television fund was there were some legitimate accusations and concerns about conflicts of interest there. So we have an independent board that can and will manage these types of things. I'm not a television producer. I don't produce independent films. I don't produce documentaries. But there's more money than ever before in Canadian history for the development of Canadian content to be made available for Canadian consumption on programs and networks like the CBC.
But they can't get the money into their, like if they repeat Corner Gas or CBC Little Mosque on the Prairie over and over and over again, they're going to get money into their envelope. CBC plays Canadian shows, but there will be no time left on the schedule for any other networks to put Canadian shows on there. That's where I think that, as much as you guys have put a lot of great work into it, I think there's a huge flaw in that bill for that reason, because there's not going to be room for Canadian shows to get on the air and no incentive for new Canadian shows to be developed.
No, I disagree. The money is on the table like never before. The board can make the decisions about what kind of envelopes and what kind of criteria you're describing. So everything that you're describing is up for debate, but I don't think it's quite as you've described it.
Five of the seven members?
Corner Gas can't just consume the entire envelope. $350 million, as I said, more money than ever before.
Corner Gas
content.
is very expensive,
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. As is this show, but it's great, and so we're very happy for that. Look, there's more money than ever before. Independent board that will be able to make these kinds of decisions, and so far they're working very well. And by the way, the feedback from the creative community has been overwhelmingly positive, like 95-5.
I think people are hopeful, but there are concerns about this.
Always. It's a lot of money.
Okay, so you called Vancouver Canucks Canada's team. You.
Thank you.